How you doing, kiddo? There you go. So what's poppin', man? How's New York Comic Con going for you?
It's going really well. Thanks so much. It's been a while since I've been to New York, actually.
What are you most excited about in this project?
This project? For me, it's actually just being a Superman fan. I mean, I love Superman. It's always been something I've wanted to work on. And when Rick approached me to do this one, it was like a dream come true. It's not just Superman, it's like the Superman family. So I get to work with like Superman's son, and then also throw in Batman as well. It's like a complete combination. So, but obviously Superman. I've said that a couple times, I think, now.
So you've been a fan of Superman since a youngin'?
Oh yeah. Definitely the Donner Superman was a huge influence for me, and then I started following John Byrne's run on Superman and cartoons and everything. It just seemed like a part of me. I have a picture when I was like about 3 around Christmas time, and I've got a Superman doll, but I had a fever that year. I was really sick, and so I'm covered in blankets and just sweating profusely, but I'm just staring at this Superman doll in front of me, like so intently, because I just thought it was the most coolest thing in the world.
Have you ever attempted to fly as a kid?
No.
It doesn't work. I tried it once.
That's why he's in the condition he's in.
I wish it was that simple.
So when you're writing these, you're writing iconic characters, but they're kind of the newer versions of iconic characters,
right.
You know, and they've been established in the comics for a while now, but they're still newer. How do you approach them so that they're their own and not just retreads of their parents?
Yeah, that could be a challenge because it is a situation where, just like I said, I know this history of the character for so long that you almost like are wondering which things you want to avoid stepping on just because people already know it or seen it. But at the same time, you kind of want to also make those steps so that you get that emotion. So it's basically what we approach it as. We try to sit down and ask ourselves, well, what is the emotion behind kind of the stuff that we saw early on? What is the feelings that we got, the excitement when seeing the Donner Superman, for example? And how are we going to infuse that into this project? And that becomes a bit of a challenge, but it also becomes our North Star that we focus on. We just try to make sure that we're playing the right kind of spirit to the character, and then barrel through with what new stuff we have, in terms of the script and the material in front of us. So it's a challenge, but it's actually a lot of fun.
Now, how the source material? I mean, you have the Super Sons. They had a short-lived series. What kind of source material did you kind of look over to kind of get a feel for the characters?
I know that Rick saw the original series, and I believe he and Jeremy really worked on that as an inspiration. But I know that it was also something that they started with and decided to branch off from. So it's not necessarily a complete translation of the original comic. It's kind of a thing where we get the advantage of, I think, sometimes being able to read the comic and getting that aspect of being able to focus on it as an audience member, and then say, what are the things that we really like about this? What are the things we want to exploit for our movie? What are the things we want to expand on? And so we're able to pick and choose the things that we like, and then also look for the things that we would like to infuse for ourselves. So,
Damien or Jonathan?
Oh, definitely Jonathan.
Damien would probably be more fun to write.
Damien is definitely a treat, and I came to really appreciate Damien when we're actually working on this movie. But I mean, I've said my biases how many times in this interview.
So, in terms of the fatherhood dynamics, how much did that play into it? Where did that come from? Like, can you talk a little bit about the father?
Well, it's interesting to kind of think of these characters as fathers, because that's kind of the new angle that we can play on, because the stuff that I saw when I was a kid, he was obviously like single, still trying to court Lois. And it was funny, actually, we were waiting to come in. Rick reminded me, I've got my son now. He's got his children. Our creative talent just had their child as well. So it's kind of, we're all parents right now, and we're all kind of in that place. So that's something that I think our mindset is just there. So we're kind of thinking like parents. We're able to actually approach this from a point of view as somebody who has children. It's helped, I think. It just made for a deeper story.
Every film presents a challenge, and the one thing I always ask everybody is, what did you take away from this that going forward you might put in on your next project?
That's a very good question. One of the things is like I hope this won't be boring, but it's like the technical aspects that we had to apply, because it is a situation where we're doing a lot of CG and we're doing it like trying to create that 2D rendering. So that was a different thing. Rick and I had worked before on 3D before, but it was more of a sculpted environment. We were doing Lego movies and things, and so that was something that we were thinking about in terms of design. We wanted to make sure that it had a comic book feel. In terms of the lighting, things like that, wanted to have a comic book color kind of vibe to it, contemporary comic book, and but also, you know, make sure that it was like a really interesting 2D kind of vibe animation. So that was something that was really like a challenge for us, and something that I think was like a real exciting thing for us to consider while we were putting the whole thing together.
Okay. Yeah. And just one thing I like about Damien and Jonathan is their dynamic in the comics and how they do become like best buds. Could you speak a little bit about that and how it's played in this film?
Yeah, I think that one thing that was great was the fact that Jonathan is like slowly coming to terms with his own powers, and Damien is already living in that world of superhero lore and superhero background. So it's kind of like, on the one hand, you want one character entering the superhero dynamic and another character that's already there, but then you have it flipped where Jonathan is a normal kid. He gets to experience a normal life, and Damien's life isn't like that. So he's experiencing kind of a normal friendship for the first time, and so that was kind of the fun, is to have those two trajectories like interact and exchange. And like I said, working on it, ended up really gaining a big respect for Damien as a character, because he ends up being kind of a likable, huggable character by the end of it. You know?
Thank you.
How did you guys come up with picking the voice cast for the project?
Voice casting, you're going to have to talk
Especially
to...
when you have such iconic history to play with in the voiceover world.
Yeah, I think honestly that's just what you just said, is by holding on to the spirit of those characters. That was something that we really wanted to make sure that each of these actors could bring that kind of energy to. It was interesting is that we had, for casting both Damien and for Jonathan, that was a little bit different, because we were entering new territory. You had a Christopher Reeve mold you could follow before, getting that energy and stuff, but now how did the sun sound? But when we finally got these guys, I just couldn't believe how lucky we were, because I still remember them telling me, I was just like, "Are you kidding me, God?" I was just like thrilled. It was just exciting to be able to work with them. So they just nailed it. Yeah, I wish you guys could actually sit and record with them, because they're just like so entertaining and so much fun.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
The DC animated movies are known for sort of, you guys typically do like a real big story with your main like three characters, and then you do some of the smaller ones in between with like some of the other lesser known characters. Are there any DC characters that you would like to see come to the animated universe that haven't yet?
I'm trying to think, like offhand. I'm a big fan of Superman, obviously, so it just like naturally follows. I follow Shazam or Captain Marvel,
Right.
But I feel like they've already done a couple of things with that. But that would be pretty cool. I think it'd be kind of neat. They could actually expand even on the Shazam family too, because it would be like there's so many different characters there.
Yeah.
And it's like it's also a great history. And I go back to reading the comics from the 40s, so it's like I really like that kind of stuff. But, yeah, they'll tell me what'll be the next thing I work on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're a big Superman fan. I am as well, so I'm glad to hear that. But what is it about the character that makes him so great?
It's funny, is like it's interesting to say Superman's got all the superpowers, and that to me is, I think, the most boring aspect of the character. Truly, it's a great power fantasy, but what I always liked about Superman is just who he is as a character, that kind of positivity he brings. The fact that I think his superhero is probably his biggest superpower, rather, is probably his personality, and the fact that he's a nice guy, and the fact that he inspires in you, like the idea that you could be a nice guy and you can do good for the world. That always kind of struck me. I've always like flocked to that kind of vibe. I always just, when I feel like Superman's done right, I always feel like a better person to watch it. That makes any sense. Yeah. All right. We'll have drinks later.
Thanks for your time, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all we got time for.
That's great. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
That was a great one, kiddo.
You're going to replace Rick. Yes, you amazingly still talking.
Man, I looked down for a second, like I said,
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it.